Alrighty, guys. Hello, hello, hello. All right, just making sure, we're doing a bit of housekeeping. 1 second, guys. Just doing some quick housekeeping, making sure you guys can hear me. Put it in the chat down below if everything kind of sounds good so we can get started with this. You know what? No, saw Superman a few times this week, and I'm pretty sure all of you tuning in have seen Superman a few times because uh this movie, in my opinion, I'm gonna just start off right to that. I absolutely love the movie. I think it was refreshing to go in because I am a big DC fan. I've always been a fan of DC, and the DCU soured my taste a little bit. I'm gonna say that the DCU soured my taste. There were times in these past few months, even these past 2 years, when I'm watching, Superman trailers, when I was watching, the announcements, be like, I really want this to work. But as a guy who loves Superman, a guy who loves comic books, who grew up really with the Superman character on shows like Smallville, Superman and Lois, and even the animated series, like, I really want this to work. And I walked out of Superman, if you saw my out of theater review, just positively glowing and smiling. And I've had a chance to see the movie a couple times, and I can say, I like it each time I watch it. Now, this is a spoiler discussion, so if you have not seen Superman, leave. Leave right now. Go see the movie because it is a ball of a time at the movies. Now that I've put the spoiler warning out there, we're gonna jump in to the spoilers. But we're probably gonna start off first with me giving my thoughts on like the movie in itself and the characters, and then we'll get into the spoiler discussion, future of the DCU, ending, post credits, all that stuff that you guys really want to hear. Uh, and let's go here. Alrighty, okay. So Superman spoiler discussion. All right. So we are going to move on. So first, we're going to talk about the characters. So I'm going to give you my thoughts on David Cornsweet. Yes, David Cornsweet. Big David Cornsweet fan. Now, we're going to make sure everything's still running smoothly. All right. I know the screen's looking a bit weird, so I'm going to try to fix that for you guys right now. All right, let's see what I can do. Stop sharing for a second. Share back. All right. All right, that's not looking okay. Of course, we got to run into problems here, because we're always running into problems and we're doing our stuff. All right, how's that look? That looks a lot better. That looks a lot better. Okay, so we're gonna dive into now. My thoughts on David Cornsweet. I think David Cornsweet, I thoroughly enjoyed him. Now, what I'll say about Cornsweet, he is not like Henry Cavill. I'm not going to compare David Cornsweet to Henry Cavill because, as you've seen the movie, these are two very different Supermen, and I like that. I think as fans, we always be like, "Oh, who's your favorite character?" You gotta be either this one or that one. It's either gotta be Henry Cavill or it's gotta be Christopher Reeve or even David Cornsweet. I'm like, well, I can't really compare Cornsweet to Cavill because those Superman are so different. The tones of those movies are so different, and I love it when you can kind of switch up a tone for a character. And Superman is a character that at times on the big screen, I think it's hard for people to figure out how you do a movie about a guy, who is the most powerful metahuman in the world, in the universe. Like, how do you do a movie about that guy who can't, suffer, who can't get hurt? Well, I think, James Gunn, of course, did a brilliant job, presenting a Superman, who is always getting beaten down. That's what I love. I love stories where the mightiest of heroes can get beaten down and they rise up and they go through some conflict and they rise up to overcome those challenges. And that is what happened here. You know, when I started the movie, like the movie, starts, of course, in the scene, you guys have seen it, where he crashes down, and there's like a little like intro, describing the world, the DCU, because this is our first time for many people entering the DCU. He crashes down saying Superman has been beaten for the first time. Now, when I read that, I was like, oh, ballsy. Because you're telling the audience when you're putting in Superman lost for the first time. Because you look at a character like Superman, who's been depicted as this god-like character, and you can't even imagine, like, what could beat Superman? What could beat him? And then you see, Luthor. Luthor is the one who beats him. And we'll get into Lex Luthor in a bit, but I think David Corn's right. He's Superman. I love the emotion from it because it always felt like at times Superman's such a stoic character. Like he has everything worked out. His life's great. It always feels like that sometimes. Here, I love that David Cornswright is suffering, through, even if it's the decision of, Jor-El, how he realizes that message that he received from them in their craft. They're like, hey, I thought I came here to serve humanity, protect humanity, when really it seems like my parents, sent me here, to just revitalize the population of Krypton, to put the Kryptonian influence on Earth. And that kind of like in that moment, it takes a shift in the film for him. Where it's like, what's my purpose? Like everything I've been doing, is that a lie? Is what I'm doing truly like what I'm meant to be? Am I truly even a good person? That is what I love. And one of my favorite scenes, and I think a lot of people have talked about it. One of my favorite scenes in the film is when it's right after Superman learns about the true intentions of his parents that Lex Luthor has exposed. And what happens is Superman just goes home, sits down on his couch, like, oh my God, and really from the decision, there's just a giant battle with the Justice Game behind him, and Lois is there, and they're just talking. And the great thing about that scene is that you're so worried about the action in the background, where it's like, oh damn, but you're also listening to this conversation. One of the most powerful lines that he says, in my opinion, after rewatching the movie a couple times, is when he's like, I'm going to turn myself in to the government. He's like, and Lois is like, what? Why are you going to do that? He's like, maybe because it'll help me find crypto. He's like, and Lois is like, why? Why would you do that? Because, and I think in her eyes, Lois sees that kind of Clark giving up. But it says like, I got to find my dog. He's like, he's not really a good dog, which, yeah, he's not a good dog, but I don't want him to be alone, and I know he's suffering out there. And yeah, that line just tells you who this Superman is. This is a guy, who's gonna help anyone. If you like, even the kaiju fight, like even if I kind of questioned it at first, but kind of understood it when I saw it several more times, he saves a squirrel. Like you think, like with all the human life going on, he saves a squirrel, but that just shows his empathy for humanity. How he doesn't want even one single loss of life when he's doing his battles. Like he's trying to protect everyone. And you look at the Justice Gang, they're just attacking the monster. Where Superman's like, listen, I'm looking at the collateral damage. I'm trying to protect my city and the people who trust me. Sorry about that. And that's another thing I love. I love that this is not just, a big, oh, there's action in the movie. There is action, but it's not, the movie doesn't define itself by its action. It doesn't define itself by its huge action sequences. It's the moments between characters, the discussion going on. That is the most intriguing thing. And this was also one of the first times I also left the movie wanting more. Listen, the movie ended, I'm like, damn it. I wanted to stay in that world. I wanted to stay in that DCU. I wanted to stay with Superman. And of course, another line that everyone's been talking about is the line where he confronts Luthor at the end, saying, like, I am human, just like you. I put one foot in front of the other and try to do my best every single day. And sometimes that's enough, and sometimes it's enough. But I keep trying. He's like, basically to me, that saying is like, I can't change what I am. I can't change that. I can't change that I'm Superman. But each day I can try to do better than the last. And that is a message to anyone saying, like, hey, we all have our bad days. We all have those times when we feel like shit. Like we've all felt like shit at times, but we got to just keep going, keep trying, because in the long run, that's all going to pay off. And that's like something that really spoke to me as like, oh, I've never really connected to a character like Superman on that level. But hearing like him saying like, I am human. I am just like the rest of you. That was like, I can finally relate to this character. I get it. And of course, this is like you don't want to say it like right now. Like a lot of people's like, we don't want to say it, but this isn't about an immigrant. And the themes of immigration and kind of being someone in a place that don't really belong is a major theme in my opinion to the story. But overall, I think David Cornsworth sells it. Listen, David Cornsworth, I think he did very good. But he is still not my favorite Superman. I I'm still a very much big Henry Cavill fan. Like I love Henry Cavill, and of course, you guys know we got our Superman reaction up the channel. I I I love Christopher Reeve. I kind of don't want to rank them because I just love, you know, more comic book content, and I love more Superman content. And I'm so glad this movie worked, and I'm so glad that I really enjoyed David Cornsworth as Superman, and his Superman does have that James Gunn flavor. So if you're not really a James Gunn fan, I don't think you're going to have the most enjoyable time watching the movie. But if you love, James Gunn style, and this movie does go full comic book, like literally, it felt like I, it's what I imagined every time I opened a Superman comic book is what this movie was. And all right, those are my thoughts on David Cornsweet. Now I'm gonna move on to the next set right now, and I got a bunch of pictures right here of our next set. You guys already know. So I'm going to be talking about, kind of the Lex Luthor, side of this movie. And I'm going to talk about these three characters together. Of course, you guys are probably like, why'd you put Metamorpho with these characters? Did you see the movie? Metamorpho's not with these characters. I'm like, yeah. But, since, we were introduced to Metamorpho in the movie with Lex Luthor, I just put him in there. And, like, it kind of, like, really didn't join the Justice Gang till kind of the end of the movie. I'm going to take a little sip real quick before we get into this because I'm going to do a lot of talking right now. All right, let me talk about Lex Luthor. This, in my opinion, is one of the best iterations of Lex Luthor we have had. Listen, when you think of interpretations of Lex Luthor, you go immediately to Gene Hackman. And then I think my second choice is Michael Rosenbaum. And you're like, okay, what? If there's similarities to this Lex, like, what's the difference? What's the difference? When I was a kid, I watched a little cartoon called Justice League and Justice League Unlimited. And there was a season where Lex Luthor was the main, like, kind of bad guy in that show. And I'm watching this movie, I'm like, this is the Lex Luthor I remember watching, And what this Lex Luthor is like, this Lex Luthor is not a good guy. You grow to hate this character when you continue to watch the film. Like, I'm going to talk about the scene where he imprisons Superman and he brings up the falafel dealer. Like, I was like, okay, Superman kind of seemed like a kid movie. Lex Luthor just straight up shoots a guy in the head. He shoots a guy in the head, and him and, like, this other government leader that's bad are just laughing. I'm like, that just shows you how evil he is and how much he hates Superman. Where he's like, I'm just going to murder everyone you love. I'm going to murder your parents. I'm going to murder this falafel dealer or who just gave you food that one time. It doesn't matter. Anyone who's had contact with you, I'm going to kill them. Now, another thing I love about the performance Nick Hoult did. I love that this wasn't a Lex Luthor, who's like, oh, Superman wronged him. He did something, he wronged him. And that's why he hates him. No, Lex Luthor hates him because he fears inferior to him. Lex Luthor is a proud man. He is representing kind of, the billionaires, the people who he wants to control everything. And he feels like Superman is an outlier he can't control. So he's like, I can't control him. I got to hate him and destroy him because if I can't be the best, if I can't be the best person in the world, no one else can be. So his whole mission is just, I don't like him. I just hate this man because I know I'm better than him, but the world sees him as the best man. Lex Luthor wants to be known as the best man. And that's what I love. Nick Hoult was my favorite part of the Superman movie. Listen, I think the Lex Luthor interpretations we've had recently have been somewhat mixed. I think Jason Eisenberg, that wasn't to me what Lex Luthor was. I also look at the recent one, Superman and Lois. Oh, I can't remember that guy's name. Was it not Michael Chiklis? Oh, it was the guy from Walking Dead. who played a very different Lex Luthor. Like I liked it, but it was not really the Lex, I always thought I would read on the comic pages and in one of my favorite animated shows, Justice League Unlimited. But this was the Lex I have been wanting to see. There is so much, you can compare to Michael Rosenbaum, because I am a Smallville guy. Like, I grew up watching Smallville, and it was like the best thing ever when I was watching it. And Nick Hoult understood the assignment. He understood who this character was, who Lex Luthor was, and like what he had to do on his time on screen. And every time Luthor's on screen, it is so enjoyable to watch. Now, I'm going to talk about the other two characters in this poster now. We're first going to the engineer, which is, I knew going to the movie, the engineer was kind of our gateway into the Authority movie, which we were which we are somewhat, I think, still getting. Now, I thought it was a cool character. It felt like the engineer was in the place, if you are a Superman fan, of Mercy Graves. It very felt like there was very similarities in the comics of Mercy Graves. And if you don't know who Mercy Graves is kind of, always was kind of like the assistant, the bodyguard of Lex Luthor. And he kind of turned her into an unstoppable cyborg / killing machine. And that's what I kind of felt like this character wasn't here. Now, there are some cheesy lines from her. Like, there's one line she's like, "I'm with you, Lex. I sacrificed everything for this." I'm like, okay. I think the purpose was these side characters are in here just to like flesh out the story, because I think, in my opinion, James Gunn works best when he's doing an ensemble. I think James Gunn knows how to do ensembles. That's why Guardians works so much. That's why Suicide Squad. That's why Peacemaker. When he has like a bunch of great surrounding characters, the movie just flows better. And like Engineer, she didn't make the biggest impact on me, but I enjoyed her. Now, Metamorpho. I was very interested to see what they're going to do with Metamorpho, because Metamorpho's character that I have seen in like animated stuff, sometimes in comics, where I've been like, he's been okay. There's been times where Metamorpho's been this snarky kind of asshole type character. And you had Anthony Carrigan in here, so I thought because of Barry, he was going to be like this snarky kind of asshole type character. But the thing about Metamorpho that I enjoyed in his limited screen time is that he was someone who was on the wrong side of everything. He was being forced to do something for Lex, and he just cared about his child. But like, he realized that like, hey, I got to work with Superman. I got to help him get out of here because what I'm doing is wrong. As soon as Lex shot that guy, Metamorpho was like, listen, this is not who I am. And he was scared. And I'm like, damn. And Metamorpho, his powers were so cool. I thought, it was very comic booky, his powers. And, even though Metamorpho was probably the smallest role type character in this movie, I would be interested to see where you go next with him. I don't really know where you go next. Maybe you do a Justice Gang movie or TV show, but very much enjoyed Metamorpho. But still, Lex Luthor stole the movie for me. Absolutely amazing, his performance. Nick Hoult, was the standout of this film. All right. Next up, we have the Justice Gang. I'm very excited to talk about this. All right. The Justice Gang. I will talk about, there were some good and there were some bad I liked about the Justice Gang. Let's talk about, Mr. Terrific first. Listen, I was about halfway through this movie where I was like, we saw Terrific once battling the Kaiju. He didn't really do anything standing out. I was like, okay, what are they going to do with this character? As soon as you get to a beach with Terrific, you get into the second half and the third act of this movie, Terrific becomes one of my favorite characters. It was the surprise of the movie for me, Mr. Terrific, because the one time I had seen Mr. Terrific in live action was Arrow. Like, I did not like the interpretation of Mr. Terrific in that show, because Mr. Terrific supposed to be like one of the smartest guy in the room. He's an intellect like Tony Stark and Reed Richards. Like, this guy is intelligent. And the first time I ever saw Mr. Terrific was in, of course, Justice League Unlimited, where he was kind of, the leader of the base of operations in the Watchtower. And after this movie, I'm like, that is the Terrific I saw as a kid watching the animated series. Because Terrific, he's a cold person, who can't really connect with people. But damn, is this man cool? Like Edi Gathegi, I might have said that wrong. Put in the comments or somewhere if I said that wrong. But I think he is going to be big. Like people are gonna be casting him left and right. I of course know him from X-Men fame, having one of the quickest deaths in a superhero movie we've ever seen. And I was like, he stood out to me even now, like, damn, I want to see this guy again. And terrific, he slayed it. He was great. Terrific was I came out of the movie, wanting to see more of this character. That's what it is. These side characters like the Justice Gang are here not to add, be big characters in the movie, but they're supposed to add little details to further along Superman's story. And I think terrific. The fight scene he has is one of my favorite in a superhero movie in a long time, where he just goes beep, 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 with his terrific balls. I'm like, that's badass. He's badass. In the music, which we'll talk about a bit later, the music with that fight scene was good as too. Now, next one I'll talk about is Guy Gardner, Green Lantern. I am a huge Green Lantern fan because I, of course, grew up reading Green Lantern comics like the Sinestro Wars, Brightest Day, then there's Blackest Night. Some of my favorite stories in the DC comics are Green Lantern stories. And I've been wanting to see a Green Lantern on the big screen again since the Ryan Reynolds movie. And I liked him. This is Guy Gardner to a T. It felt like out of the three, Guy Gardner's was another one who really stuck out to me the most. Of course, Mr. Terrific was the more, central member in the Justice Game, but Guy Gardner, he was funny. Like, he was the asshole I wanted to see in this movie because in the comics, he's an asshole. I always go back to a sequence I remember from watching Young Justice where the Justice League is trying to select new members. And of course, the Flash goes like, hey, why don't we add more firepower to our team? There's another Green Lantern, Guy Gardner. And then Hal and John Stewart are just like, no. But Barry's like, but we could really use it. And they're like, no. And like, that's all you need to know. This guy is an asshole. And Nathan Fillion, I think, perfect for it. I'm excited to see what they do with him in the Lanterns and like how he might be a bit more serious. But I think Guy Gardner's going to have a more limited role in that Justice League. In that Lantern TV show. Sorry about that, guys. Ooh, Yana, it's a bit late here, so I'm just trying to power through it. Next is Hawkgirl. I'm a bit mixed on Hawkgirl. I was very excited for Hawkgirl because Hawkgirl was another character that I really loved in the Justice League Unlimited animated series. The one thing I did not like about Hawkgirl is that every time she attacked, she went, ah, and she had to like scream like a hawk. And like, I also felt at times like she didn't really need to be in here. Like, she was the most, out of every one of these like characters in Justice Gang, these are the most minor. Now, I will give her something for the final scene we seen her in, where she goes and like kind of gets the president of the other country, and like she gets him, and he's like, "You won't kill me, Superman wouldn't kill me," and she's like, "I'm not Superman," and just drops him. Of course, we don't see the death because we can't show someone's head spattering on the ground, in a PG-13 movie. But still, that was like, oh, where like Superman has this moral compass. These Justice Gang characters are like, listen, we got to do the job, no matter what happens. They're kind of, in a way, a bit more violent than Superman. And like, they're like, listen, we don't really care about saving the bad guys. We just want to protect the people and get the job done. Which, I liked, that overall, I think Hawkgirl's role was limited. I would very much like to know, though, if they're going to go the reincarnation route or the alien Thanagarian route. Because, I felt like there could have been more like with Hawkgirl relating to Superman in a sense if they kind of went her alien Thanagarian route, which would have been, I think, very interesting to see, because I'm a big more into the Thanagarian side of the lore for Hawkgirl. The reincarnation stuff, I kind of liked, in the animated series. Like, I mostly just love the Jon Stewart, Shira Hall relationship in the comic and the animated series. Like, that's something I've always wanted to see. And it really does feel like this movie is taking a lot of inspirations from that from that time, from that unlimited, Justice League show, from the Justice League shows. And I like it. It kind of felt like that was kind of the inspiration for this kind of group right here. But yeah, I really love the Justice Gang. Love Terrific. Love Guy Gardner. I thought Hawkgirl, I enjoyed a bit more when I saw it the second time. But overall, I thought Hawkgirl, underused. I at times I thought like, why is she in this movie? All right. And then we're gonna go into our final characters, and then we're gonna get into spoiler talk. All right. Because I want to talk about these two guys. All right. It's not just gonna be Jimmy Olsen and Lois, it's gonna be kind of the whole Daily Planet crew. All right. Now let's talk about my interpretation of Lois. I really liked Lois. What I loved about the Superman movie is that the romance of Clark and Lois was such a big thing because my whole thing is that I like romance. I love seeing romance in my superhero content. That's why I'm a huge fan of the Ultimate Spider-Man comic book. I'm a huge fan of the Gwen Stacy Peter Parker relationship. I need more romance in my superhero movies, and James Gunn delivered. Oh, these two, they must end up together. Like, I don't want anything bad to happen to these. I don't want any Brainiac killing Lois. I don't want any Joker killing Lois. I want these two to have happy ending. And I love that they set it up that she knows. She knows he is Superman. And I think if they went the right way, like, oh, she doesn't know she's Superman, I feel like that would be kind of a disservice to Lois because Lois is a very smart individual. Like, she is the ace reporter of the Daily Planet. Like, she would be able to figure out who Superman was like that. Like, she would snap her fingers. She knows, like, hey, Clark, you're Superman. And I love how she's, like, in the beginning of the movie, kind of questioning Clark. Like, hey, what you're doing, going to these other countries and forcing yourself into their political situations. Why do you think you have the right to do that? And Superman's like, I'm not trying to impose anything. I'm just trying to help people. And Lois trying to explain to him, it's like, well, that might be how you see it, but everyone else is seeing it as you kind of, doing your own thing. Everyone's like, everyone thought you were an American superhero. You fought for America. He's like, no, I fight for the world. And, I love by the end of this where, like, Lois's journey for this film is that, at times, she's thinking about in the beginning of this movie, like, breaking up with Clark because, like, she's like, I'm not good at relationships. I don't know if I can handle this. And then you would get to, like, the second half where she's like, I want to save him because I do love him. I want to expose Lex. I want to save the man that I love. And, there's nothing wrong with that, in my opinion. There's nothing wrong with her wanting to fight for the love that she wants and fighting for the good just as much as Clark is. Like, she does not want to be a damsel in distress. Lois Lane is not a damsel in distress. Like, she is badass. And, like, I love that, there were sections of the movie that did deal with the reporting side in this film, which you don't really get a lot in other Superman content, especially we never really saw it in Zack Snyder's kind of Superman iteration, In Brandon Routh, we kind of saw kind of a little bit of it, but like Brandon Routh was not really, in my opinion, a superhero movie, even though it is a superhero movie in a sense. She very much reminded me of the Lois Lane I saw when I watched the original Christopher Reeve Superman movie for the first time. And like that is a Lois Lane that I very much love because I saw the chemistry. I saw the chemistry that I felt when I watched that OG Superman movie for the first time. So great. Now, one character that I thought they would not focus on a lot was Jimmy Olsen because they always, for some reason, Jimmy Olsen is always a character I feel like they can never get right in any Superman medium. He's always kind of like the side character. He doesn't get a lot of screen time, but I was surprised how much James Gunn used him, and he was one of my favorite parts of the movie. Jimmy Olsen has some of the funniest scenes in this movie. Him and Tess, it was the funniest thing to see because like they present it where like Jimmy Olsen's kind of a playboy, all the girls love him, and like that's what I find hilarious because when I think of Jimmy Olsen, I do not think of a guy who pulls a bunch of girls, and that kind of made me laugh. And him and E's relationship was like one of the funniest things in the movie, and I do enjoy my comedy when I'm watching a movie like this. I enjoy the James Gunn comedy, and because James Gunn could go from a very comedic scene and then James Gunn can go do a very serious scene where you can be crying your eyes out. So that's why. And Jimmy Olsen, I would love to see more of him in like a Superman 2. See like where he is. See if him and Eve are still together. But Jimmy Olsen, with the time he was on screen, I loved him. I loved him. I loved him. I loved the Jimmy Olsen movie. Now that's kind of my character dissection of those characters in the movie. Now, we're going to be talking about now 2 major spoilers. If it's to the cameos, to post-credits, to the future of the DCU. So first off, we are going to talk about the cameos. And there are 2 specific cameos that I want to talk about in this movie. And that is, of course, the first one. Let's see. Come on, work. Is, spoiler, this girl right here. Supergirl, which I loved. I loved the cameo. I thought it was great. Now, I didn't mention Crypto before because I enjoyed Crypto in the movie, and I'll kind of explain why I saved Crypto for right now. I love the setup here, and I love how James Gunn executed bringing Supergirl into this movie. Like, you could have done what Marvel does is, we're going to do a post-credit scene setting up, Supergirl. And James Gunn's like, I love that what James Gunn says, like, we don't want to do post-credits to set up projects. And I think that's, like, good because, as we know with Marvel, post-credits has sometimes come to bite them in the ass. And I love how she just shows up at the end of this movie. It's like, hey, cousin, one of the robots is like, Superman, your cousin is here. She's like, what's up? And I love that energy. Oh, I love it. Because that leads straight into the Tom King run of Supergirl, which is a comic I plan to read. I do plan to read that before the movie comes out. But I do know the basic gist of that comic and where they're leaving off for I love. Listen, I think with Supergirl, they've always presented Supergirl as like, oh, she's exactly like Superman, except she wears a skirt. Like, that's the thing. I'm like, listen, I like that, but like, I want to see what differentiates Kara from Superman. And in just the minute and a half or 2 minutes we see Kara, you get a sense like she is a loose cannon. She is a loose cannon. Like, you look at I love how the reason why Crypto's a bad dog is because of her, because she takes no responsibility. She is an immature, teenager, which I love, which is perfect for her. And I think Millie Alcock is going to slay it. I think she's going to be awesome. Honestly, this cameo made me so much more excited for Supergirl Woman Tomorrow because, just Supergirl now because they're not doing the Woman Tomorrow subtitle in there. And I've been excited for Supergirl. But I'm like, it's out of the things they've announced, Lanterns, I'm excited, way more excited for. The Batman, Brave and the Bold movie, even the Batman Part 2, very much excited for that stuff. And I'm like, Supergirl, I've seen in my lifetime, I've watched the Supergirl CW series. We got a version of Kara, in the Flash movie. I'm like, how can they differentiate Supergirl from Superman? Because they've always presented Supergirl as a character who is just Superman in a skirt. They go at the same ideology, but I love in the scene that you get a sense like this is someone who is depressed, who is a sad person, and you can't really introduce a character because no one's gonna want to watch a sad party girl just drinking her sorrows. Like, that's not gonna be a fun time. But you do it this way where it's like, oh, she's just partying because hey, I want to do it. I don't want to be a superhero like you cuz but I think Supergirl Tomorrow is going to dive deep into her trauma, how she knew everyone on Krypton where Clark Kal-El didn't really know anyone there. He never experienced the culture of Krypton. She experienced it all, and she wakes up in a pod being like, listen, I've lost everyone I've loved. I'm all alone. I don't know what to do myself. All I know is I'm gonna drink my sorrows away and go party. And something's gonna happen in that movie. I think something's gonna happen to Crypto. Something's gonna happen to her where she's like, listen, I gotta stop being this party girl. I gotta step up, and I cannot wait to see her interact with Lobo. I am expecting James Gunn. I am expecting in this Supergirl movie that there is going to be a drink off between Kara and Lobo, and I'm going to be all there for it. I cannot wait. I cannot wait to see these two interact. And I think Lobo, with this version of Supergirl, I think Lobo would be kind of good friends with her. So I'm excited to see that. And that cameo, and also the suit, it's very much what you expect. It's got the red skirt. It's got the same Superman symbol for blue and red. I like the skirt. Listen, I think the skirt is like a Supergirl trademark. Of course, I loved the last Supergirl suit they did in the Flash movie. I liked it, but I'm like, I feel like Supergirl's more of a skirt character than a pants character, And I think I think the skirt's more iconic to the Supergirl look. All right, and that's my thoughts on the Millie Alcock Supergirl cameo. Now there was one more kind of cameo that really surprised me, which I shouldn't have been surprised because it is James Gunn, and that is, oh come on, Peacemaker. Yes, Peacemaker's in the movie, and it's the most Peacemaker cameo it can be. Listen, Superman. It was just right after how the world realizes that Superman was possibly sent here to rule over them and form his own harem. And then he gets home, the TV's on, and there's an interview with on the TV. It says, "What do you think, Chris?" And it goes over it. So he's like, "Listen, I'm not surprised." And it's just Peacemaker telling his stupid stories that only he believes, that he convinces everyone that are true. And it was great. I was like, "Oh my god, yes!" And it's interesting because he is wearing the suit you see right here on my screen. He's wearing that suit, but we see in the trailer, that he's possibly traveling into this multiverse or another universe, where he's meeting maybe this DC eras. I don't know. I'm not a big multiverse fan, but who knows? But it was a very funny cameo, a cameo that I should have expected, and I think it worked for what it was. Listen, the things I love about the cameos in here is that they weren't thrown in your face cameos. I look at what Marvel does as cameos. I look at Doctor Strange. It's like, oh, we're gonna be going to. I'm looking at Doctor Strange 2 mainly, where it's like, oh, we're gonna go to this Illuminati universe. Well, here's Reed Richards. Here's Professor Xavier. Oh, Captain Carter. Oh, look right here. It's Captain Marvel. I'm like, what? It does feel so forced. Like the cameos I sometimes feel like I see in Marvel movies. This is why I hate the multiverse talk. I honestly am not a fan of multiverse that much anymore. Where it's like, let's just throw all these cameos and we'll go like, yay, I love the movie. And Marvel's like, give us some money. And like, but I love that the cameos in here were in here for a reason. You put Christopher Smith in here, who is someone who's very much, from the Republican side, of, the world. I'm going to say that, he is, his dad is, I would say where he's from is very Republican. And, he's on like kind of, a Republican newscast. I'm going to say, please don't get angry with me in the comments by just saying that. But, and like, it's like, oh, let's just, hate. And, Christopher Smith is that type of character. And he's still a character I can enjoy, but like it adds so much to the discussion of like if Superman is really a good guy by putting him in there. It's a fun little cameo. I love the Supergirl cameo because it's not forced. It makes sense. It's what I expected. It's like, hey, Supergirl pops in. She gets her dog, goes back to partying and drinking. That's all you need. It's like, oh, I wonder what's going on with her. I can't wait to see her in the Supergirl movie. And that's it. That's it. Now, I'm going to talk now about the post credits. And since that's all the like slides for you guys, I'm going to stop sharing. All right. So, let's talk about post credits. And I'm not going to talk about, what they are because you guys kind of already know what they are because you've seen the movie. And also, they are not scenes that you need to stay after the credits for. But I think that's a good thing. I left that movie, Superman, being like, I was fine with it. Listen, I think, like I said before, the one thing that has bit Marvel in the ass with the post credits is that they keep setting things up. You look at all the ones we have recently. We had Star Fox and Pip from Eternals. We had Hercules from Thor: Love and Thunder. We had the Kangs from Ant-Man and the Wasp. And many, many more that I can't possibly remember, but are there. I can remember Clea from Doctor Strange too. Like all cameos that are set to set up more projects, but like we haven't seen any headway on it, and that's gonna be like, what's Marvel doing? I think it was perfect to just do these nice little two end credit scenes. One that's kind of like a cute one with Crypto, and then the second one, which was kind of, and then which was kind of like a funny scene about like how Superman was like, you really couldn't just align everything better. It's like, oh, Mr. Turk is like, oh, You want me to do a better job reassembling your city? Okay, F you, man. Like, that's what they had to be. Like, I have seen online that people have been mad. That's like, James Gunn, what was that? I stayed after the credits expecting to see, I paid money to see some cool stuff in it. I'm like, listen, I know you guys might think it's surprising, but before the Marvel days, before that week, guess what? You would see a movie, and then when it ended, you would go home. Oh my gosh, what is that? Like, there used to be nothing at the end of the movie. Listen, post credit scenes, they're fun. They are fun, but like they don't need to lead to the most next important thing. Listen, I love Marvel movies. I love Marvel movies, but the post credit scene, in my opinion, has just been something that everyone now uses in a movie to be like, oh, you like the movie? Well, here's what's next. Maybe we don't know. We might change our minds later, but here you go. I'm like, I didn't need that from here. I think the ending with Supergirl was like that was my post credits. I'm like, I didn't need anything else. I'm like, okay, I'll stay after credits to see what they are, and they were fine. They were fine. For the people expecting that every single post credit scene needs to be something that leads to something else, I think is absolutely dumbfounded and stupid. I think you're idiots if you go see a movie just be like, I can't wait to see what the post credit scenes are. I'm like, you should be wanting to go see a movie for the movie. Like come on guys, come on guys. And I think James Gunn has made very clear they're not gonna do the Marvel post credit scene where they're gonna set up a project every time the post credit scenes roll. Like, listen, we're gonna take our time, we're gonna be patient, and that's what I want. Like we've always said with Marvel, we want quality over quantity. Like, sure, James Gunn could have ended Superman being like him in his apartment, and Batman shows up, or the Flash shows up in some sequence. I don't know. I don't know, guys. I'm not in James Gunn said. I don't know what the man's thinking. Guys did a show called Creature Commandos. Like, who knows what that man is thinking? Like, he put a freaking flying dog in a Superman movie, and we absolutely loved it. Like, who knows what he's thinking? And I love the philosophy that he is saying that we are not going to give the go ahead until we are absolutely sure. Absolutely sure. And I think that's perfect. That's perfect. Like I said, this movie ended. I didn't need anything else. I'm like, listen, Supergirl showed up. What I wanted? Sure. Would it be cool? Batman showed up? Cool. Wasn't expecting it, but hey, didn't need it because this was a Superman movie. It wasn't the Justice League movie. It wasn't the Guy Gardner movie. It wasn't, the Rick Flag movie. Like, all you needed to do, in my opinion, was be like, have a great time in the movie, have me fall in love with Superman and the characters and the world, and that's it. Listen, even if Supergirl wasn't in the movie, I would have been fine with it because I knew it was coming, and I would have waited a year. I'm like, okay, I'll wait a year. But the Supergirl cameo told me the difference between Superman and Supergirl, which I very much love that they're doing. And I know a lot of people don't like the party girl aspect. I absolutely think it's a tremendous idea because listen, Kara doesn't know anyone. She is all alone. She's drinking her sorrows away, partying, and I'm excited for that. I'm excited to to kind of differentiate herself. Like I really want to see Kara kind of talk like, listen, my cousin, he doesn't know the pain I have. He doesn't know the pain that I deal with losing everyone I love, my mother, my father, the people around me, my friends, because she all experienced that. And I'm excited to see them dive into that. Excited to dive into the trauma of Supergirl. Because if Thunderbolts told me anything, I enjoy trauma in my superhero movies. But overall, I enjoyed the movie. I gave it, in my opinion, an 8 out of 10 because I'm still a bit mixed because I don't know where to rank it on my movies this year so far because I loved Thunderbolts. Listen, I love Thunderbolts. Like I saw that movie 4 times in theaters. I absolutely love that movie. I like Superman, but there are things with Superman at times that I thought Thunderbolts had better. Thunderbolts, in my opinion, with the stuff with Bob and the trauma stuff, I can relate to. But the Superman stuff, how relevant it is in today's society, and how Superman had a really, really great moment, about describing, who he was to Lex. That was like, damn. And then the Paul Kent scene, with his parents. Oh my God. Didn't talk a lot about that. But like that was the scene that made me cry. I'll talk about that right now. The Paul Kent scene made me cry. And I'm going to tell you right now, there's only been 3 times I have cried watching superhero movies. The very first time I cried watching a superhero movie, uh, was Guardians of the Galaxy 3, another James Gunn movie with the death of Rocket Raccoon. Spoiler, he lives for that, but still, I was bawling my eyes out. The second time was Thunderbolts, about the talk about the hug. The hug made me cry in Thunderbolts. And then here, the conversation with his dad. Listen, I'm a sucker for deep conversations about love and like father figures in any type of medium. Like when I watched Love, Simon, which is a movie I don't think is talked about enough. I cried my eyes out with the talk with Josh Duhamel and like Simon the movie. Like that is a scene that makes me bawl, and that's why I love that movie so much. And the scene that they were pocket reminded me of that so much. It reminded me of it so much. I cried because he's like, listen, like Paul Kent's like, listen, parents are here to guide you, and sure you'll make mistakes on the way, but that's the part of life. He's like, and like I see Brixton is like, son, I am so proud of you. I love you so much, and I'm like, Bucket, you're tugging on my heartstrings, Bucket. You're making my heart. You're making this wee boy's heart fill up with tears and sadness, like because I felt like in a way, like man, I've had not that specific conversation with my own father, but like I've had conversations in the vein of that with my own dad as well, and like that's why I loved that scene where it made me cry. But listen, I love this movie. I'm probably gonna go back the next weekend and see it a bunch more times because I just want to see it as much as I can. Excited for Fantastic Four though, but Superman, like right now, it is. I'm ranking it number 3, maybe number 2 on my list. Sinners is the number 1 spot for me. Sinners is still number 1. Right now, Thunderbolts and Superman are tied for second place for me. But thank you guys so much for enjoying this stream. Thank you for tuning in. Like, I sadly like no comments were spread in this. I would love to discuss. You know, and if you guys comment in the video, and like I'll come back and check it later. Put comments, down below. Subscribe. Of course, do that. But put it in. I'll answer your questions. Just put it in there, like anything you want to say. I want to talk about this movie, and like if so, like I will do another like special episode where I will go over those questions, and and like your thoughts on the movie. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys enjoyed Superman as much as I did. I'll see you guys on the next one. A peace.